This is Caffeinated Risk, the podcast for security professionals by security professionals. Here are your two self-proclaimed grumpy security guys, Tim McCreet and Doug Leese.
Welcome, folks, to Season 4 of Caffeinated Risk. For our next podcast, we chat with Marco Ayala, who has over 2 decades experience focused on industrial security. Marco has led efforts to secure oil and gas, maritime port, offshore facilities, and chemical sectors, while supporting federal, state, and local entities for securing the private sector. He's highly active in the International Society of Automation, where he's been a long-time senior member. At ISA, Marco is also a certified cyber instructor with 22 years experience, focused on 62443. Marco has also volunteered and contributed to the Area Maritime Security Committee for the Gulf of Mexico in a sworn role to the United States Coast Guard as Chair of Threat Intelligence and Cybersecurity for the Outer Continental Shelf. Marco is also a member of InfraGard and is currently serving as President for the Houston Members Alliance. Marco has been part of InfraGard since 2014. And now, let's check out our latest podcast with Marco Ayala.
All right. Yes, so welcome to Caffeinated Risk. I am not the executive assistant that we need for this podcast. And, this is a bit of an impromptu meeting, but thanks very much, Marco, for joining us.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me on. I wasn't aware of the podcast, but I've been a pretty astute listener here the past couple months. And I'll have to say I'm really impressed. So I'm actually going back through the archives and digging out some of the ones that I can listen to while I'm either en route to a plant site or what have you. So thank you both for having me on.
That's awesome.
Oh, it's great. Yeah, I caught your talk on S4, and it's kind of weird because we're in the technology space. Normally, most people don't care about this, but Marco has the unique distinction of having like a LinkedIn viral post about OT cybersecurity.
Yeah.
And the number of people that have chimed in on that. So I'll link to it in the show notes. That's what got me started, was this whole concept of deviant normalization.
Mm-hmm.
This is not a weird zombie show or anything, even though we're recording on Friday the 13th. It's
good point.
It's a very powerful idea, and maybe I could get you to just kind of jump in with that.
Yeah, so it's been something for the past, honestly, 2 decades that have been really on my mind. Having come from the asset owner perspective and started to actually see many of the systems evolve into fully electronic digitized systems, and having worked at a plant that was built in the mid 40s here in the U.S. I was actually cutting my teeth on pneumatic controllers, pneumatic computers, because these things they stay they're pretty rock solid. So late 80s, early 90s, we started to cut over to single loop controllers, multi loop controllers. And we still had a lot of the pneumatics out there. And honestly, there's still a lot of plant sites across the world that heavily rely on pneumatics. And you will find some pneumatic controllers. But where I was going with this is the fact that we've started to see this deviation or acceptance over a small a dwell time, a period of time where we've started to accept this full digital state that we're in now. And as you can see, even the last 10 to 12 years, look how far we've gone with everything from cloud, edge, fog, SCADA in the cloud, all these different perspectives. And I think it's great. But one of the key things there is when it comes to safety is paramount. And I've been thinking about this for a long time, is that when things not necessarily do not happen that have major impacts or hazards to human life or environment, those things, new technologies, new engineering practices become the new norm. And so I based a lot of the discussion and the talk of the video that you're talking about, the talk at S4. And also I gave that similar talk to in Singapore on normalization of deviance. And it really stemmed from the work that was done from Dr. Diane Vaughn on normalization of deviance surrounding the Challenger disaster, which occurred January 28, 1986. And I was still a very young man, a young boy, and I remember watching the actual disaster unfold in school. And so that really impacted me. But the key piece there is that 7 astronauts were killed, and they say all accidents are preventable and avoidable. And in this case, over many years of deviations in perspectives of organizational perspectives and engineering standards, certain normals became actual state. And so after an accident, you're kind of going back all through this and say, when did we deviate? When did we change? When did we have this new philosophy? Because that's what it really is changing your engineering practice and philosophies, like what we're doing now. And they were able to really pinpoint. Dr. Diane Vaughn was able to identify that, through a long incubation period before a final disaster, when there's early warning signs, telling you that, hey, it's either been misinterpreted or ignored or missed altogether and completely. And so when I think about that, let's look about all the perspectives of the cybersecurity aspects. Since the early 2000s, security has been, ramping up. 2010, Operation Olympic Games, whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
We started getting into this realm of, security possibly being that aspect. And in 2016, 2017, Triton was the first safety systems specific malware that impacted overseas, Middle East. And so that's kind of those early warning indicators that Dr. Diane Vaughn is telling us. It's like, hey, you haven't had an accident yet, but you keep pushing the envelope. And so the problem is that many of the standards that we've developed over time, including the ISA 99 working group, is that many of these standards take years to develop. And so by the time vendors were already starting to actually put control and safety together into the same rack and same chassis and same backplane, there was nothing to say push back on. And so from a philosophy standpoint, standards that came out much later allowed it. And so even the technical logic, the linking oil and gas, which is DOE funded, I believe, actually had discussions around security, around safety instrumented systems or safety systems altogether, and saying, yeah, we should really look at that. We should really be concerned about this. And even after 2017, with Triton, Hatman, I think is what CISA had called it, that near miss, because that was a near accident, honestly, because it failed safely, thankfully. But the fact of the matter is that we have this golden goose that's telling us, that it's here. And it's very similar to the O-rings in Challenger, where they had already indicators of compromise that something bad was going to happen. I think that's where we're at right now. And that's so my whole discussion around normalization of deviance is to bring awareness to folks that are new to not only automation, control, and safety, but also to all the IT, OT, operational technology, security folks that are out there, so they can understand how we got there.
Yeah. And I think that's, like you said, it was a slow and steady path, one idea at a time. That doesn't seem so bad. Okay, the next one. And I remember early on working with companies, and we would be talking about OT cybersecurity. This is post-Olympic Games, but pre-Triconex kind of time frame. And the common statement back from the OT engineers would be, it doesn't matter because we still have safety systems.
Yeah.
I think that's a very good stance. You don't do these physical processes without safety systems, but we didn't ask that question. What about when that safety system is digital?
That's right.
And as you say, same backplane. Now they're in the same device. Yeah.
Integrated, interfaced. Yeah.
Yep.
Even having the same project database and the same engineering station. So these are the realistics that we're in. And the problem with, and because I've worked on the process safety side on process safety managed facilities, and process safety is near and dear to my heart because I've worked around it all my life. And the sheer thing of folks saying, well, our safety systems will protect us, which is true. However, if those are compromised or defeated or inhibited, then you're only relying on your mechanical reliefs, and that's already a bad day. That's already shelter in place. That's already,
Yep.
Emergency response. That's also community response. That's a bad day. So when I say mechanical, I mean relief valves, rupture discs, containment dikes.
Yep.
I was reading a post one day where they said, well, with cyber, we should just build larger containment dikes and add more safety relief valves. And I'm thinking that's not the answer. That's the wrong way of looking about it.
No, it's not.
Well, and you tell that to a large capital group to say, hey, because of cyber, we need to now spend a capita of 10 times what we are so we can build a larger facility, and that's just not going to happen.
Mark, I kind of wanted to ask, because you brought up something really cool. I was reading some of your posts and articles, and this idea of the erosion of trust and how it's just such a small, and you'd already mentioned this before with the Deviance model, this idea of these incremental, I hate to say battles that we've lost in security, but it feels like it, right? Like over 40 years, before today, last night I was doing some research, and I look back on my own career and went, Jesus, it feels the same way. It's like little bits of what would have been a really big perimeter or would have been a really big, long fence line. Now it's like it's almost right up against the window. And I was kind of curious, you talked a little bit about that in this concept of that erosion of trust. Can you explain this a bit more to the folks listening to the podcast?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we have to realize, and especially now and going into the future, is the fact that we have that unrealized, unverified trust in everything that we do now, especially in the digital systems. And without having to bring up other, companies or vendors that have been compromised or, they've zero-dayed themselves, or the sheer matter is that many of the systems that we deal with at the plant sites are remote, and we have that unverified trust angle from the vendors, the OEMs, that need to support plant sites, 24/7, 365. But the problem is that we have at times unfettered access into these systems with full root or admin capability. And a lot of times that goes unchecked. And so unverified trust is still knowing that you have trust in a vendor, but unverified is who is on the other side of the keyboard and what is the intent, if any. And here's the thing. When it comes down to accidental tampering, having lived in this world, things happen. And when I say that unverified trust is when you have a fleet, let's say you have an offshore fleet of vessels or offshore platforms in the Gulf of Mexico, and you're working with a specific asset owner, and you're in charge of all the drilling equipment, for example. And you're on the right customer, you're on the wrong rig, working on the right control system on the wrong rig, and now you're actually making modifications and changes. And that's not just making things up. This has happened in the industry, is where you have equipment movement. So now you have somebody that's onshore, possibly accidentally working on legitimate equipment on the wrong rig. So that trust has got to be fully scrutinized.
Yeah.
And that's a big piece of it. So Idaho National Labs has got a really good perspective on what they call consequence-driven cyber-informed engineering. The aspect there is they really go into depth around 4 phases of identifying and verified trust, but also critical function and high consequence events. In other words, determining that and following through. So that trust relationship that we have with our vendors, with our OEMs, with who we let in, is something we really need to scrutinize. And I think companies are doing that now, but the way things have evolved over the last 2 decades, we weren't doing this 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't really doing this 10 years ago.
No.
And there's 3 things that have made this happen. And that's the technology, right? So we have computers that are 20 years ago, we were trying to do antivirus and it would just completely just bring everything to a halt. Uh, but as far as the computer speeds, the network speeds, the ability to traverse the world now has really put good vendors, OEMs, people that really want to do right, but also possibly nefarious actors that close to you. And so that trust relationship is great because let's say your company is just stellar. Y'all have the the top-notch IT security folks. They've been trained. Maybe some of them are ex-military or post-military, and they come from a red team, blue team side of it. That's great. Your infrastructure, your fleet is rock solid, right? You're feeding it. It's got a great cybersecurity life cycle, both on the operational technology and on the IT side. But then when you start looking at some of these smaller mom and pops that are actually have maybe unfettered access into your control system, you can't really control what their cybersecurity practices are, or the OEMs, or if the OEMs get breached in, as you both are well aware, the OEMs have been breached over years. I mean, if you look at Telvent, that happened in 2011, a lot of blueprints, project files for infrastructure globally was stolen. And so those are the types of things that we deal with and the trust side of it.
I wanted to kind of zoom in on the challenges that we have with these intermittent problems. And it's a very hard read, but I highly recommend that Diane Vaughn book for anybody that wants to really get their head around this problem.
Absolutely.
It'll give you an existential crisis, but after the end of that, you'll be fine again. The thing I noticed is when they were talking about the O-rings and all the different testing, this O-ring issue seemed like it was going on for 3-4 years.
For some time, yeah.
And there seemed to be a lot of different kinds of problems. One time it would be this, and on the next launch, they'd notice this other thing, but the first thing didn't work. So
yeah,
this whole collection of intermittent problems all just kind of get mashed into, we just said it, the O-ring problem.
Yeah.
Right?
It was the O-ring problem. And then if you compound the fact that they were trying to fly in cold weather out of Florida, so the temperatures were below even what the O-rings could withstand. So Morton Thiokol, the head engineer, Roger Beaujolais, had wrote a memo the year prior saying that we would have loss of mission, loss of life if we don't really get to these O-rings. And that wasn't even discussing around the temperature issues that they were going to see. So imagine being the engineer at Morton Thiokol, the rocket booster company, and then having NASA, say, "Hey, are we good to go?" And it's like, no. And originally, the management and the leads at Morton Thiokol had said, "Yeah, we stand by our engineers. We're doing a blanket turn down on this. We're saying no." And then over the pressure from NASA and not being, even the engineers were not even a part of a lot of the conversations, it got pushed to where the Morton Thiokol management flipped and when it just said we're go for launch. And so there's many YouTube videos out there and documentaries that have been provided. I really highly encourage folks to look at that, because whenever you look at normalization deviance, it is a phenomenon, and it takes a lot of that dwell time, that incubation time for folks to change, but it affects organizations, individuals, engineering groups, standards bodies. And so it's something that we have to really, really consider. And if you look at what happened to NASA again with Columbia, where that broke apart over Texas, and again, loss of life and impact. That's a really, really sad story that just adds on to even Dr. Diane Vaughn's book. There is that the astronauts were not even truly aware of the actual impacts.
Right.
And there's more documentation on that, but The whole idea there is that we as a discipline, whether we're security or whether we're engineering, is we need to know when to push back. And so when somebody comes to us and say, hey, we want to integrate SAP, we want to know how many spurious trips we have from the safety system, we want to get that into Power BI, we want to do all this and this, and we just have to say from an engineering standpoint, no. That's something that we can get from on site. We can push that up and, from a flat file externally, we can get it to you, but you are not integrating or interfacing or whatever you want to call it to our most critical systems that have human life, environmental factors involved. Because I will tell you, the reason I bring this up is that there's nothing that states in any of the standards that pushes back on any of that. And so if you're an engineer and you're new and you're coming out and you're like, hey, the standards allow it for me to interface and integrate, there's nothing that says you can't. So we have to push back, and we have to start thinking a little further. And so I'm probably not picking up any friends from the vendor side, but I'm sure you'll be happy to sell a safety system and a control system separately.
I think we want to go back to the real problem of when any individual or a group that understands the problem starts pointing this out, but stealing a phrase from the environmental, like when this inconvenient truth of that automated integration isn't safe. Well, this other person says it is.
Yeah, that's right.
And they can do it cheaper.
Oh, yeah.
But when you look at the people that are making the decision, they have a whole lot of other people giving them information too. And every group, every time it moves up in our pyramid organizational structure that we're all fond of, the story gets a little bit more compressed and a little bit more polished. And the people in charge of the biggest decisions often don't really have all the facts in front of them. Like you said, it's not actually against the standard right now to integrate your Azure Power BI data lake thing into a safety system. Probably not a good idea.
Yeah.
That data needs to go the other way, and it doesn't need to be that real time. If it needs to be that real time, it better have a screen on it and somebody's butt in a chair watching it, right?
So the key thing is that many unknowingly interface their distributed control.
That's the thing. They didn't know that's what they were signing up for. That's the problem.
And they didn't know what they were signing up to, a converged SIS safety system. And so, so that one of the key things is that there are companies that have looked at this and said, look, if we are going to use vendor A for our basic process control, we shall, not should, we shall use vendor B for our safety systems, period.
Right.
They will be connected in a certain way. We'll use, whether it's firewalls or just hardwire outputs to inputs, whatever it may be, the safety system will be the ultimate command, system to say, regardless if the basic process control is asking me to open, if I don't see that the system is clear to open valves or start pumps, then we just won't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason you've seen companies that have stayed with that is because it wasn't around cybersecurity. It was around bugs in code and bugs in software. And I was fortunate to see, especially, in the late 90s, early 2000s, where we would find bugs in distributed and safety systems to where you'd even see not blocks not nodding. I know that's really hard to.
Wow.
And it's like, oh, that's just a flaw. Go with this new update firmware. And that's the journey that we began to go on and so we said, look, if we have that same bug in our basic process control, we sure don't want to have that in our safety. So we would try to put, not all in one basket, but we would diversify.
Marco, does risk ever get into the discussion? We see it on the cyber side all the time where we're not getting either the opportunity or we're not spending the time we need to understand what's the risk. And when we do present it, to Doug's point earlier, it looks really pretty, right? It's in a really nice slide deck, and there's not a lot of detail backing it up. But from the OT and the SCADA side of the house, is some of those decisions Are you working a better risk model than we are on the cyber side? Because it feels like it, right? That you've got a little more clarity on the approach. You've got a little more requirements that you can specify. It doesn't seem like we have that same weight here on the cyber side.
It's really getting there, to be honest with you. We're still in that journey. If you ask most process safety individuals when they do their HazOps, LOPAs, or process hazard analysis, when you ask them, hey, was cyber a component of that? You'll probably get a mixed bag of answers of no, that's IT's problem, right? Or that's IT's focus. Yeah. And so they're not really quantifying and qualifying the risk standpoint from either degrading the systems that they're using to take credit for to meet their safety instrumented and safety layers functions that's going to protect the systems. And so we have seen a shift over the last 5 years, 7 years, where standards such as the ISA IEC 62443, the 3-2 on risk assessment has helped drive folks to really look at that perspective. And there's other risk assessment methodologies, but I think we're getting there, and I think we're able to try to work with companies that are serious about it. But I still run into companies that are just starting that journey, and I really encourage them, if you're listening, that there are ways to really assess these things and not just say, hey, it's IT's problem. Yes, it's IT and OT and automation, control, and safety. And you're also your HSE folks need to get them all into a room and do a workshop. And I'm not saying an exercise on tabletop workshop. I'm talking about on the assessment of what can go bad, what are the impacts, what are the consequences, and what are we doing to mitigate that?
It's no secret that I'm a big fan of the CCE process. You actually do this as a service. You are qualified to do these facilitations, right?
I have taken the training. I've taken the boot camp, and I do support. I do support the effort, absolutely.
So you've been in the room when these meetings are going
Yes.
on and these workshops multiple times, different companies. So how do we keep these human tendencies to ignore stuff that just doesn't fit with our convenient truth or our preferred path? And we just come to accept these things. Well, the standard doesn't say it's not, so it should be okay. They know what they're doing. And when we're in that system of system analysis or the consequence-based targeting, I'm sure we're all doing this with blinders. Well, actually, I'm asking for a friend, but if you could maybe share.
Yeah. I think one of the best beauties of the CCE from INL is going in there, understanding that risk and likelihood and probability is a Boolean of 1. In other words, everyone walks into the room, whether you're gas flow or your production management or your safety or your legal, is that you're coming into this discussion around system of systems and talking about a high consequence event or events, understanding that all of your barriers, all of the things that you think you have broken down. So let's have a real, true discussion on therein, what can they do, what are the impacts, and what are those consequences. So I think coming into a assessment like this, providing folks that, hey, we're not going to get into calculations here. We can do that later. We can talk about that. Many of the other risk assessments do that and puts a lot of different calculus. And the sheer fact of the matter is that large companies here in the US, Canada, globally are targets. Mm-hmm. And have a key component into the nation's wealth, but also its resiliency. And so whether you're an asset owner or operator that feeds another part of the supply chain, these could have just monumental domino effect. So I think getting everybody into the room, understanding that, hey, this not only has happened in the past, but we need to really look at this as going forward. And what I have seen and what I've witnessed is folks within the first hour kind of sitting back in their chairs and saying, this thing over here that we have has really been on our minds for some time, but we I think this is a good opportunity for us to bring this up. Is this a possible issue that could impact or stair step within our own systems? And so people start to really open up. And then you've got measurement talking about, well, yeah, I mean, if you get into our asset management system, then you could have a plethora of capabilities that you don't even need to get into the control system. You can just manipulate the sensors.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you start having this discussion, and then before you know it, it's like, wow, okay, so what do we do? How do we get a hold of this?
Yeah.
And Doug, you're right. Looking at the system of systems, the people, the process, the technology are key aspects of it before you even get into the targeting elements. But it's something that companies are adopting, and I really support the mission statement there and that critical function assurance that the folks at INL are just laser focused on. So that team is amazing over there.
Tim can take this on a very interesting and wild tangent, I'm sure, but I don't really see any difference myself between a laser sharp mission focus in a CCE framework and an ESRM business first conversation. So
no, you opened the door, so I'm going to open it. I'm going to go through it. You're right. The way you described it, Marco, and how these sessions go, this is identical to what we do with the ESRM model. It is getting the stakeholders in the room and having them start discussing that from a risk perspective. And you're right, it's amazing to see the mindset change. And I've watched them, right? As I've run these workshops for years, and you can actually see them getting away from the, their arms folded, leaning back, not being engaged to, oh my God, I never even thought of this. Yeah. And then the room just takes off. And some of the solutions, they seem fairly wild at the beginning, but at the back end of the session, when you're writing up your notes, you're realizing, wow, that really is a way to mitigate the risk. And I think we need to get better at that. I think we need to start bringing the humans in so that we start looking at it from a human element, because, Doug brought up a really good point, and you have as well, is that the standard exists, and that's terrific. But it doesn't mean that that's the only place, and we can't stop at just the standard. Now it's the next step. How do I make sure that the programs we're putting into place are going to reduce the risk?
That's right.
And that you're focusing on that human element as well, because it's still in all of this. It's still the human on the keyboard that's typically causing a lot of the issues.
Absolutely.
How do we solve that? How do we get people engaged? Right?
Absolutely. And I think we have a major opportunity, especially as I mean, we're not getting any younger. And so retirement for us. Old guard. Yeah, old guard. Yeah. So for those that are listening that are part of the old guard, it is our duty and our mission to give back and mentor those that are new into our space to think, right? And to think about their deployments, think about the safety impacts and just the mission assurance aspects of these systems that that we're deploying. And I think it's also important that we foster that relationship even into our training programs, making sure that they understand is, hey, although the standards allow you to do it, let's really think about this. Do we really want to entrust, this critical element to that? And so, again, it goes back to the behavioral, right? The sociological aspects of Dr. Diane Vaughn is how far down the road are we going to kick the can until something bad happens? And we don't want to do that. We want to be able to get ahead of it now and maybe create our own internal company standards that pushes back.
Thank you, sir. That was awesome. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. We really appreciate it. It's been great.
Really appreciate it, and look forward to talking to you both again.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Outstanding.
Thanks for listening to the latest podcast from Caffeinated Risk. Make sure you visit our website, caffeinatedrisk.com, to stay up to date on what we've been working on. Our website has bios of our podcast guests, posts about topics we're passionate about, and even a library of reference material we find valuable in the work we do every day. And don't forget to subscribe to Caffeinated Risk on your favorite podcast service. This way, you'll be notified when we release our next podcast, and you can listen to our previous guests just in case you missed them. Thanks so much for listening to Caffeinated Risk.